The hidden photograph. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of sunlight piercing the gloom of the attic. Lily coughed, waving a hand in front of her face as she wrestled a heavy cardboard box further into the light. It was filled with Rose's old belongings, relics of a life Lily knew little about. Rose rarely spoke of her past, and Lily, in her youth, hadn't thought to ask. Now, a gnawing curiosity had taken root. She rifled through faded dresses, yellowed letters tied with brittle ribbon, and a chipped porcelain doll with vacant blue eyes. At the bottom of the box, tucked beneath a pile of worn velvet, she found it. A photograph. It was an old-fashioned print, its edges softened with age. Rose, impossibly young, stood laughing, her arm linked with a man Lily didn't recognize. He had kind eyes, a strong jaw, and a shock of dark hair that fell across his forehead. They were on a beach, the waves a blurred background, their joy almost palpable. The sun kissed their faces, etching the moment in amber. Lily's breath caught. She'd never seen her mother look so free, so genuinely happy. Rose was usually composed, controlled, a fortress of poised perfection. This woman in the photograph was a stranger. Who was this man who had unlocked such uninhibited joy? She tucked the photograph into the pocket of her jeans and closed the box, her mind buzzing with questions. She carefully navigated the attic stairs, the scent of mothballs clinging to her clothes. Rose was in the kitchen, meticulously arranging a vase of lilies. An ironic choice, Lily thought, considering her own name and the secret she suspected her mother was keeping. The clinking of glass against glass was the only sound in the room. "Mom," Lily asked, trying to sound casual. Rose turned, her expression guarded. "Yes, dear." Lily hesitated, pulling the photograph from her pocket. "I found this in the attic." Rose's face paled imperceptibly. The hand holding a lily trembled slightly. For a fleeting moment, her carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing a glimpse of something raw and vulnerable beneath. "Where did you find that?" Rose's voice was tight, almost a whisper. "In one of your old boxes." "Who is he?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rose took the photograph, her fingers tracing the outline of the man's face. "That was a long time ago. I can see that. But who is he?" Lily pressed, her curiosity burning. Rose sighed, a sound heavy with regret. "His name was David. I knew him before I met your father." "What was he like?" Lily asked, desperate for details. Rose's eyes clouded over, as if she were looking back at a memory she couldn't quite grasp. "He was kind, easy to talk to. We spent a summer together. It was a long time ago, Lily. A lifetime ago." "What happened to him?" Lily persisted. Rose's composure snapped back into place, the mask of control firmly reestablished. "It doesn't matter. He's not part of our lives. It was just a summer romance. Nothing more." She handed the photograph back to Lily, her touch surprisingly cold. "But you look so happy," Lily said, her voice laced with confusion. "Happier than I've ever seen you." Rose's lips tightened. "Don't be ridiculous. Your father made me very happy." Lily didn't believe her. She saw the flicker of pain in her mother's eyes, the subtle clenching of her jaw. She knew Rose was hiding something. "Did you love him?" Lily asked, the question hanging in the air. Rose turned away, busying herself with the lilies. "That's enough, Lily. I'm not discussing this anymore. Put the photograph away and let it go." Lily stared at her mother's back, her mind reeling. The photograph had opened a door to a past she never knew existed, a past Rose was determined to keep hidden. But Lily couldn't let it go. This David, this ghost from her mother's past, had stirred something within her, a desire to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. She felt a reckless abandon and was now determined to know more. An unexpected encounter. The gallery air vibrated with hushed conversations, a delicate chorus of murmurs underscored by the tinkling of crystal. Lily, stationed beside a clinical white sculpture echoing a discarded paper sack, battled a rising tide of ennui. She'd accompanied Chloe, her vibrant roommate, envisioning an evening of cultured amusement, but the artwork, mostly chaotic abstractions and disquieting portraits, left her unmoved. Chloe, a flamboyant figure in crimson and leopard print, was deep in discussion with a gent sporting a waxed mustache and a velvet coat. Lily suppressed a yawn. This was meant to be a refuge from the drudgery of her data entry job, a peek into an elegant world. Instead, it resembled a lavishly decorated waiting room. Her gaze swept the room, catching on a man positioned before a vast canvas alive with swirling azure and emerald hues. Not conventionally handsome, he possessed an undeniable magnetism. A firm chin, salt and pepper temples, and eyes that seemed to absorb light distinguished him. He studied the piece with a focused intensity mirroring her own yearning for genuine artistic impact. As he turned, his gaze locked with hers across the crowded space. An unexpected spark ignited between them. He offered a subtle, almost tentative smile, and Lily reflexively mirrored it. He moved toward her, navigating the clusters of art aficionados with effortless grace. "That canvas," he began, his voice a resonant baritone that sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. "It evokes the sea post-tempest. Beautiful, yet hinting at something untamed." Lily, typically awkward, discovered an unexpected ease. "I understand," she replied, surprised by her own poise. "A promise of upheaval." "Precisely," he responded, his eyes creasing at the corners. "I'm David, by the way." He offered his hand, a warm, solid touch. "Lily," she returned, her fingers lingering after their brief contact. Time seemed to dissolve as they talked, though likely an hour hadn't passed. Their conversation flowed from art to life, to the stifling predictability of their routines. He recounted tales of travel, of living in diverse locales, of pursuing inspiration wherever it bloomed. Lily, in turn, confessed her yearning to write, her fear of failure, her weariness with the spirit-crushing spreadsheets that consumed her days. He listened with genuine interest, his gaze unwavering. He offered no empty assurances, nor did he diminish her worries. Instead, he posed probing questions, urging her to explore her own thoughts and emotions. "You possess an inner fire, Lily," he observed, his tone gentle, almost reverent. "Don't let the mundane extinguish it." His words resonated deeply, stirring a dormant part of her spirit. She felt truly seen, understood, validated as never before. Chloe could never appreciate the dull ache of her days. Few could. As the gallery began to thin, David suggested a drink at a nearby establishment. Lily accepted without a moment's hesitation. Chloe, at last detaching herself from the velvet blazer, barely noticed Lily's departure. The bar was dimly illuminated, the air heavy with the aroma of stale malt and unspoken yearnings. They found a secluded alcove and ordered wine. "So," David prompted, swirling the ruby liquid in his glass, "tell me more about this writing of yours." Lily hesitated, a sudden wave of self-consciousness washing over her. She'd never revealed her aspirations before, fearing derision, or worse, indifference. But David inspired a sense of safety, as if she could expose her deepest vulnerabilities without judgment. She described the tales swirling within her mind, the characters vying for attention, the unfinished stories languishing on her hard drive. Her voice surged with a passion that caught even her by surprise. He listened intently, his gaze never faltering. "You must write, Lily," he urged, his voice low and earnest. "You owe it to yourself." His words acted as a release, unleashing a torrent of suppressed creativity. She felt a rush of energy, a sense of purpose she hadn't realized she craved. As the evening deepened, their conversation meandered to more intimate subjects. They explored their families, their regrets, their hopes for the future. Lily discovered that David was divorced, that he'd spent years living abroad, and was currently working on a new series of paintings sparked by the landscapes of his youth. She felt an undeniable pull toward him, a magnetic force that defied explanation. It transcended mere physical attraction. It was a connection on a deeper, more substantial level. She wanted to see him again. "I should probably head back," she said, reluctantly breaking the spell. I would very much like to see you again, Lily, David said, his gaze unwavering. I'd like that too, she admitted, her pulse quickening. He walked her to her apartment building, the silence between them charged with anticipation. At her doorstep, he paused, his hand hovering near. A secret affair begins. Rain lashed the gallery windows, mirroring the frantic rhythm in Lily's chest. David's hand, surprisingly steady and warm, guided her through the dwindling crowd, settling at the small of her back. He'd been discussing Monet's impasto technique, yet his words dissolved, leaving only the potent current that surged between them, a silent, insistent invitation. Abruptly, they were alone, sequestered in a small and used office, ostensibly to escape the din. Anticipation thickened the air. He turned, his gaze, typically sharp and analytical, now softened by an emotion she couldn't decipher. Lily, he murmured, the syllable a silken touch. His fingers rose, tracing the curve of her cheekbone. Reason urged her to retreat, to voice some demurral, anything to halt the inevitable. But she remained still. A jolt, both exquisite and perilous, shot through her. His lips descended, a hesitant exploration at first, then deepening into a kiss that plundered her senses. It bore no resemblance to the fumbling, adolescent pecks of college days. This was something else entirely, an engulfing experience. She tasted wine, and something more, an essence undeniably David. Hints of sandalwood mingled with a metallic tang, like old lineage and concealed truths. When they finally parted, breathless and disoriented, the room swam slightly. I shouldn't have, he confessed, his voice roughened. Yet his eyes held no remorse, only a fervent heat that reflected her own. No, she breathed. You shouldn't have. The words felt hollow, betraying her true desires. The following week unfolded as a sequence of covert glances and clandestine calls. He proposed a meeting, simply for coffee, a chance to talk. A transparent pretext they both understood. Tuesday afternoon found her outside his building, under the pretense of visiting a new exhibition downtown. The doorman, a stout figure with a skeptical air, scrutinized her as she stated David's name. His apartment defied expectation. It wasn't opulent, but rather a comfortable haven, lined with books and adorned with art. A chess game, mid-play, rested on a table bathed in sunlight. It felt profoundly personal. He brewed tea, potent and dark, and they conversed, a semblance of normalcy. The air hummed with suppressed longing. He recounted tales of his travels, the artists he revered, childhood summers spent in the French countryside. She listened, enthralled, her mind a whirlwind of conflict. This was wrong, irreparably, devastatingly wrong. Later, entwined in his embrace, the afternoon sun casting zebra stripes across the disheveled sheets, guilt overwhelmed her. She pictured her mother, the enduring friendship, the shattered trust. A wave of sickness rose in her throat. What is it? David murmured, his voice soft against her hair. Nothing, she evaded. Just tired. He didn't push. He drew her closer, stroking her hair. She squeezed her eyes shut, attempting to banish the images assailing her. Her mother's radiant smile, the cozy warmth of their home, the potential devastation of her actions. The secret had taken root, a venom already coursing through her veins. Departing his apartment that evening, she felt unrecognizable, tainted and complicit in a transgression she couldn't fully grasp. The rain had ceased, city lights shimmering on the slick asphalt, but she saw only the encroaching darkness within her. Suspicion and secrets. Rose watched from the kitchen window, the floral curtains slightly askew, as Lily hurried up the driveway. It was nearly 11, and the air had a sharp, pre-autumn chill. Lately, this had become a nightly ritual. Lily, slipping in just before midnight, a flurry of whispered excuses and averted eyes. Out with friends, she'd say, but Rose hadn't recognized any of the names mentioned. It wasn't the lateness that bothered her, not entirely. It was the secrecy, the way Lily's laughter sounded brittle, forced, as if performing for an unseen audience. The front door clicked shut, and Rose waited, listening to Lily's light footsteps ascend the stairs. She poured herself another glass of wine, the ruby liquid swirling in the glass like a miniature storm. The familiar sting of resentment bubbled in her chest. She'd sacrificed everything for Lily, endured years of loneliness and judgment, and this was the thanks she received, a daughter who couldn't even be honest with her. When Lily finally appeared, dressed in her pajamas and smelling faintly of smoke, and something else Rose couldn't quite place, she forced a smile. "Hey, Mom, didn't hear you come down." Rose leaned against the counter, trying to appear casual. "Just finishing up. You're getting in late." "Everything all right?" Lily busied herself at the kettle, her movements a little too frantic. "Yeah, Fine. Just hanging out. You know." "Hanging out where?" Rose pressed, her voice sharper than she intended. Lily's shoulders tensed. "Nowhere special. Just around." Rose pushed herself off the counter. "Lily, I'm your mother. I worry. You've been acting different. Are you sure everything's okay? Is it school?" "A boy." The last word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken anxieties. Lily turned, her eyes flashing. "Mom, please. I'm Fine. Can't I just have a life without you interrogating me every 5 seconds?" "Of course you can," Rose replied, trying to modulate her tone. "But when you start sneaking around and lying to me, I'm going to ask questions." Lily sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I'm not lying. I don't want to bore you with the details. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," Rose challenged, her gaze unwavering. Lily looked away, her silence a suffocating blanket in the small kitchen. Finally, she said, "It's nothing, okay? Just stuff." She grabbed her tea and headed for the stairs. "I'm tired. Good night." "Lily," Rose called after her, but Lily didn't stop. Rose stood there for a long moment, the silence amplifying the pounding in her ears. She reached for the cordless phone, her fingers trembling slightly. She scrolled through her contacts, stopping at a name she hadn't called in years, a name she'd vowed to forget. But a gnawing unease had taken root, and she needed answers, even if it meant dredging up the past. The pressure mounts. The heavy, sweet perfume of Lily's saturated David's apartment, a constant olfactory echo of their initial meeting. Lily circled the base of her wine glass, the crimson liquid mirroring the agitation churning within her. David's gaze, intense and unsettling, remained fixed on her. It was no longer the fond regard she'd grown accustomed to, but something sharper, laced with demand. "We need to talk," he began, his voice a controlled murmur, "about where this is headed." Lily's breath caught. She'd been diligently postponing this reckoning, burying it under layers of stolen intimacies. "I know," she admitted, the word barely audible. He reached out, his fingers wrapping around hers, radiating warmth. "This isn't some casual affair for me, Lily. I crave something deeper. We deserve more." Her pulse quickened. "More than what?" she parried, trying to buy time. "I desire you, Lily. Completely. No holding back. No conflicting loyalties." His grip tightened subtly. "I want you all to myself." The words hung in the air, carrying a possessiveness that prickled her skin. A claim, not a caress. She withdrew her hand, the sudden absence of his touch leaving a void. "David, you know how much I care," she began, choosing each syllable with care. "But my family, I can't just abandon them." He interrupted her, a spark of resentment igniting in his eyes. "Can't or won't. You're suffocating there, Lily. You've told me. Your mother, she dominates you, doesn't she? Her influence permeates every corner of your existence." Lily recoiled internally. His observation, though accurate, stung like an insult. "That's hitting below the belt," she countered, her tone sharper. He softened, his expression regaining its alluring warmth. "Darling, I'm not aiming to wound you. I simply see your unhappiness. I want to liberate you from it." He moved closer, his breath a warm whisper against her ear. "Don't you yearn to be free?" The thought of escaping the stifling routine, her mother's unyielding watchfulness, was undeniably appealing. But the cost, severing all ties, felt exorbitant. I don't know, she murmured, insecurity creeping in. David recoiled slightly, a flicker of disappointment darkening his face. Don't you trust me, Lily? Don't you believe I can bring you joy? He excelled at this, she realized with a sinking feeling, weaponizing her vulnerabilities. He knew precisely which insecurities to target, which doubts to amplify. It's not about trust, she offered feebly. Then what is it? He pressed, his voice regaining its edge. Are you paralyzed by fear? Fear of judgment? Fear of embracing me? She was indeed afraid. Afraid of the hurt she would inflict, afraid of the fallout. But most of all, afraid of losing herself entirely within him. I need time, David, she implored, her voice trembling slightly. I need to consider this. He rose abruptly, the chair screeching against the polished surface. Turning away, he faced the window, the cityscape reflected in the sheen of his dark hair. Time is a luxury we can't afford, Lily, he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. Decide what you truly desire, because my patience isn't limitless. The silence solidified between them, almost palpable. Lily stared at his unyielding back, a chill of premonition settling over her. The atmosphere in the apartment, previously redolent with lilies, now felt dense with unspoken threats. She felt ensnared, trapped in a self-spun snare, with no visible means of escape. The pressure intensified, threatening to overwhelm her. The letter revealed. Sunbeams, thick with drifting dust, sliced through the disordered space of Lily's room, a stark contrast to its usual pristine state. Rose exhaled slowly, lifting a scarlet silk scarf that lay carelessly abandoned, its color a defiant shout against the pale lavender walls. Lily, normally so fastidious, a quality Rose herself had cultivated, had lately become a stranger, lost behind a wall of unspoken distance. She tossed the scarf onto the rumpled covers, her gaze snagging on an ornate wooden box tucked high on a bookshelf. Lily's treasures lived there. A sudden, unnerving premonition seized Rose, a visceral chill that stole her breath. She pulled a chair over, each movement precise despite the tremor in her hands. As she reached for the box, her fingers discovered something else, a hidden layer of paper. She retrieved it, a letter, thick and creamy, sealed with a smear of carmine wax. No name adorned the front, just a palpable weight that settled like a stone in her palm. Her breath caught. She knew, instinctively, what awaited. With fingers suddenly clumsy, Rose broke the seal. A familiar scent, sandalwood, David's signature cologne, rose like a ghostly embrace, twisting her stomach. The script was undeniable, David's bold, elegant hand, etched in unwavering black ink. She unfolded the letter. My dearest Lily, the words blurred, refusing to focus. She blinked, willing clarity. The stolen moments are the only constellations in my otherwise bleak existence. I count each second until I can be with you again, feel your touch, hear the melody of your laughter. Rose suspects nothing, thankfully. Let her remain cocooned in ignorance. Our secret is a jewel I will safeguard with my life. I long for the day our love can shed its disguise, when the world acknowledges you as mine, and I as yours. The words writhed on the page, transforming into monstrous shapes. Rose felt the color drain from her face, leaving her skin tight and cold. A suppressed sound, alien and raw, tore from her throat. Remember our promise, Lily. This is forever. Yours eternally, David. The letter slipped from nerveless fingers, falling to the floor like a crippled bird. The room swam, the lavender walls closing in, becoming a suffocating cage. David, Lily, her daughter, her husband. Betrayal, a corrosive acid, burned through her. Memories surfaced, unbidden and sharp. Lily's sudden trips into town, the late hours, the excuses that had seemed plausible then. David's lingering glances, the subtle shifts in his behavior, the way he had recently avoided eye contact. She had dismissed them all, blinded by her own desires, clinging desperately to a fragile illusion. The truth now stood revealed, a gaping chasm rending the carefully constructed edifice of her life. She had built her world on a foundation of deceit, and it was now collapsing around her, burying her in its rubble. Rose stumbled back, colliding with the bookcase. A porcelain doll, a childhood gift for Lily, crashed to the floor, shattering into 1,000 shards. The sound reverberated through the sudden, absolute silence. She sank onto the edge of the bed, the scarlet scarf a cruel testament to passion and treachery. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird struggling against its confines. How could Lily inflict such pain? How could David? The two souls she cherished most had plotted her ruin. A solitary tear escaped, carving a hot, heavy trail down her cheek, fueled by grief and incandescent rage. This was far more than a simple act of infidelity. It was a profound violation, a desecration of everything held sacred. She would confront them. She would demand explanations. She would force them to acknowledge the magnitude of their sin. But beneath the searing anger, a frigid dread began to coil, a premonition that this was merely the overture, a fear that the secrets they had so diligently concealed were far more perilous than she could possibly comprehend, and a chilling fear, above all, of the depths of her own capacity for retribution. Confrontations and dark secrets. The kitchen air vibrated with suppressed conflict. Rose stood sentinel as Lily spread butter on toast, the metallic rasp a jarring counterpoint to the heavy silence. Sunlight streamed through the window, no longer a welcoming presence, but an unforgiving glare highlighting the minute jitters in Lily's grip. Any news from Michael? Rose's tone was a deceptively smooth blade. Lily flinched, nearly losing her hold on the bread. "Mom, you scare me half to death." A brittle laugh escaped her, failing to reach her anxious eyes. "He's good. Swamped at work, you know." Rose leaned against the cool countertop, arms folded. "Is he now? Because my understanding is his time has been allocated elsewhere." The blood seemed to recede from Lily's face. Her gaze dropped, fixating on the intricate labyrinth of the linoleum. "What on earth are you implying?" "Spare me the theatrics, Lily. I'm aware of your involvement with David." The toast slipped from nerveless fingers, landing with a soft thud. Lily's denial emerged as a choked sound. "That's a lie. I witnessed it, Lily. Last week at the Willow Creek Inn." The recollection seared Rose's memory like a brand. Hand in hand, looking at him with her voice faltered, fracturing. With tenderness, tears breached Lily's defenses, clouding the defiance she struggled to project. "It just happened, Mom. It wasn't intentional, unintentional." Rose's composure shattered, unleashing a torrent of fury. "You betrayed me with my former fiancé, Lily, the man I envisioned marrying. He's more than just an ex, Mom. You devastated him. You abandoned him." Lily's voice escalated, mirroring Rose's, yet tinged with desperate justification. "He confided in me about how you simply vanished, never offering an explanation." Rose recoiled as though struck. "He told you that, did he?" Conveniently omitting the fact that he was entangled with someone else at the time. Lily drew back. "That's not true, isn't it? Inquire yourself, Lily. Ask him about Sarah Jenkins. Ask him why I walked away." Rose averted her gaze, the memory leaving a lingering, acrid taste. "I shielded you from him once. I won't repeat that mistake." Later that afternoon, Rose tracked down David in his workshop, the air thick with the comforting aroma of sawdust and varnish. He glanced up, surprised, a tentative smile flickering across his face before extinguishing as he recognized Rose's expression. "Rose? What's troubling you? You spoke to her, didn't you?" Rose stated, her voice quiet but laced with menace. "You presented Lily with your skewed narrative, the one where I'm cast as the villain." David sighed, raking a hand through his thinning hair. "I simply offered context to the dissolution of our relationship." "You fabricated," Rose hissed, advancing. "You conveniently omitted the catalyst for my abrupt departure." David's features hardened. "It was an indiscretion, Rose. A lifetime ago. An indiscretion, a sharp, Joyless sound escaped Rose's lips. It transcended mere indiscretion, David. It suffocated me. It was the reason I disappeared without a trace. She paused, allowing the full weight of her words to land. Because Sarah wasn't some random acquaintance, David. She was my sister. The color drained from David's complexion, leaving him gaunt and aged. The hammer he had been holding crashed to the floor. That's impossible. Rose's eyes narrowed to slits. Is it? Search your memory, David. Reflect. The resemblance was always palpable, wasn't it? The matching dark hair, the identical green eyes. You were simply too consumed by your own desires to perceive it. David stared blankly, rendered speechless, his face a canvas of dawning horror and disbelief. The long-buried secret hung, suspended between them, a suffocating shroud of unspoken consequences. Rose turned and departed, leaving him to confront the harrowing truth, the air still saturated with the echoes of their intertwined past. A tragique accident. The front door was unlocked. That was the first wrong thing. Rose always triple-locked it, a ritual she'd performed since the break-in years ago, a break-in Lily suspected her mother still secretly blamed her for. "Mom," Lily called out, the word echoing strangely in the silent hallway. A low moan, muffled and choked, answered her. Fear, cold and sharp, sliced through Lily. She followed the sound, heart hammering against her ribs, to the living room. The scene that unfolded there ripped the breath from her lungs. David straddled Rose, one hand clamped over her mouth, the other raised high, fist clenched. Rose's eyes, wide with terror, met Lily's. A strangled sob escaped from beneath David's hand. Lily didn't think, didn't analyze, didn't even register the rage that flooded her veins. She acted. She launched herself at David, grabbing his arm with both hands. "Get off her!" she screamed, pulling with all her might. David roared, a primal sound that vibrated in Lily's bones. He shoved Lily away, sending her sprawling. He didn't release Rose, though. He just shifted his weight, pinning her harder to the floor. "Lily, run!" Rose gasped, her voice raspy and weak. Adrenaline coursed through Lily, blurring the edges of her vision. She scrambled to her feet, grabbing the first thing she could find, a heavy glass paperweight shaped like a seashell that usually sat on the mantelpiece. It felt clumsy and awkward in her hand, but the weight was reassuring. "David, stop it. Please." Her voice trembled, but she held her ground. He didn't even glance at her. He was too focused on Rose, on silencing her. Lily saw his grip tighten, her mother's face turning an alarming shade of red. That was it. Something snapped. Lily swung the paperweight. She aimed for his head, but her aim was off. The heavy glass connected with the side of his neck, just below his ear. The effect was immediate and horrifying. David's body went rigid, then slack. He slumped sideways, his weight crushing Rose. His hand fell away from her mouth, revealing a face contorted in fear and pain. Lily stared, frozen, at the scene before her. David lay motionless on top of Rose, his eyes wide and unseeing. A thin trickle of blood snaked down his neck, staining the pale skin. Rose shoved David's body off her and sat up, gasping for air. She coughed, a rattling, painful sound. She looked at Lily, her eyes filled with a mixture of shock and dawning horror. "Lily, what have you done?" Lily couldn't speak. She dropped the paperweight, the sound echoing in the suddenly silent room. Her hands were shaking so violently she couldn't feel them. Rose struggled to her feet, her movements unsteady. She brushed her hair back from her face, revealing a bruise forming on her cheekbone. She avoided looking directly at David's body. "He was attacking me," Rose said, her voice barely a whisper. "He just snapped." Lily swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to stop him." Rose finally looked at David, her face pale and drawn. He's dead, isn't he?" Lily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. The reality of what she had done crashed down on her with crushing force. She had killed a man, David, her mother's lover, her former lover. This is a disaster," Rose said, her voice rising in panic. We have to think. She began to pace the room, her hands fluttering nervously. We have to figure out what to do. Trial and reconciliation. The stark glare of the interrogation room seemed to amplify the tremor in Lily's hands as the officer intoned her rights. Each syllable struck like a gavel, fracturing the fragile reality she'd constructed since David's demise. Homicide, the word, foreign and monstrous, echoed in the sterile air. The ensuing questions were a blur, her thoughts trapped in the cabin, reliving the desperate moments, the altercation, the sickening impact. The trial became a tempest of legal intricacies and warped recollections. Lily remained rigid, eyes glued to the lacquered surface of the defense table. Rose was a constant presence in the gallery, a stoic sentinel with an inscrutable expression. Each day unveiled a fresh torment, twisting the knife. David's prior transgressions, his manipulative nature, his elaborate fabrications, were exposed for all to witness. The prosecution portrayed Lily as a calculating temptress, a rejected lover seeking retribution. Her lawyer countered with a plea of self-defense, emphasizing David's propensity for violence and Lily's defenselessness. Witnesses offered their testimonies, fragmented and conflicting, like pieces of a shattered mirror reflecting the complex web of relationships that had culminated in this tragedy. The cabin became a theater for a long-foretold disaster. Jurors examined crime scene documentation, illustrations. The most detrimental piece of evidence was Lily's initial falsehood to the authorities, a point the prosecution relentlessly exploited, hinting at guilt and pre-planning. Pale and gaunt, Lily attempted to explain her panic, her dread of the truth, but her words sounded feeble, swallowed by the courtroom's vastness. Rose took the stand. Her account was precise, calculated, each word weighed carefully. She spoke of David's magnetism, his talent for charm and deception. She depicted Lily's innocence, her hunger for affection, her vulnerability to empty praise. She detailed their complicated history, the unspoken animosity that had lingered beneath the surface for years. When questioned about Lily's character, Rose hesitated, her eyes finding Lily's across the crowded space. "Lily is spontaneous," she uttered finally, her voice thick with feeling. "But she is not a killer." The verdict arrived on a scorching afternoon. The jury's spokesperson, a woman with weary eyes, articulated the words with measured cadence. "Not guilty of murder. Guilty of manslaughter." A communal exhalation filled the room. Lily squeezed her eyes shut as a wave of relief washed over her, quickly followed by a crippling sense of despair. The sentence was lenient, considering the circumstances: 5 years probation, community service, mandatory counseling. As Lily exited the courthouse, a free woman yet irrevocably marked, she noticed Rose waiting by the vehicle. The ride back was muted. The atmosphere was thick with unsaid emotions, with years of bitterness and remorse. Upon arriving at the house, Rose faced Lily, her eyes brimming with tears. "I should have shielded you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Lily shook her head. "I made my own decisions. He was adept at making you believe you did." Rose averted her gaze. The wind chime tinkled, a dissonant melody in the balmy air. They stood there for what felt like an age, the gap between them a canyon filled with unspoken grief. Finally, Rose extended her hand and took Lily's. Her hold was surprisingly firm. "Come inside," she proposed. "I brewed tea." The tea tasted acrid, like ash on Lily's tongue. However, as she sat across from Rose, in the tranquility of the living room, she felt a subtle shift in the air. The path to reconciliation would be lengthy and demanding, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was attainable. The heaviness of the secret, the weight of the legal process, had cleared space. A bare, scarred space, but space all the same. And perhaps, just perhaps, something new could blossom there.